I never imagined that my daughter's innocent horseback ride, something she did every day, would set off a chain of events so powerful that it would bring an entire HOA down. It all started with a simple afternoon ride, but what unfolded over the next few hours would forever change the way I viewed not only my community, but the power of standing up for what's right. Let me take you back to the beginning of this story. I own a 20-acre ranch just outside the town, an expansive, peaceful haven where my family enjoys the freedom of wide-open spaces. The property has been in my family for generations, and it's a place we treasure deeply. The landscape is dotted with grazing fields, a small orchard, and trails that wind through the trees, perfect for a day's ride. It's a quiet, tranquil place where we are left to our own devices. More importantly, it's legally not part of any HOA, which means we are free to do as we please on our own land without interference from any outside forces. My daughter, who is 5 years old, has always been passionate about horses. She spent countless hours riding Daisy, her horse, around our property. It's her way of escaping into a world of adventure, a world where she can feel the wind in her hair and the rhythm of Daisy's hooves beneath her. She knows every inch of the land, and every corner of our ranch has a memory attached to it. One afternoon, my daughter was riding her horse along a familiar trail that runs near a neighboring cul-de-sac. The trail itself is technically shared with the cul-de-sac, but is still on private land, and we've always considered it part of our ranch. There's a small area under a large tree where my daughter likes to stop, give Daisy a rest, and take in the quiet beauty of the land. That's exactly what she was doing when the storm hit. Out of nowhere, Karen, the self-proclaimed queen of the Homeowners Association, stormed out of her house. Karen has always considered herself the authority of the neighborhood. She keeps an eye on everything and everyone, making sure that everyone abides by the rules of the HOA, no matter how overbearing or invasive they might be. She came rushing toward my daughter, her face twisted in anger, her phone gripped tightly in her hand. I'll never forget the look in her eyes. Karen immediately started yelling at my daughter, accusing her of trespassing, claiming she was endangering the entire neighborhood, and of course, citing some ridiculous HOA animal ordinances. She was shouting so loudly that the whole street could hear. But here's the kicker. We weren't trespassing, and my daughter wasn't endangering anyone. We owned the land where she was riding. But Karen, of course, wasn't interested in hearing any of that. She started making wild accusations, and before I knew it, she was on the phone with the police, telling them that my daughter had brought livestock into the neighborhood. Can you imagine a 12-year-old girl being reported to the cops for riding her horse on her own land? My daughter, confused and upset, tried to explain to Karen that she lived just beyond the tree line and that we owned the land she was on. But Karen wasn't having any of it. She wasn't interested in the truth. She was determined to make this an issue, no matter what it took. As Karen continued to escalate the situation, I got a call from my daughter. She was in tears, shaken by the confrontation, and asked me to come quickly. I jumped onto my ATV and sped down the path toward the cul-de-sac. As I approached, I could already see the officers standing near my daughter and Karen, both of whom looked like they were at the center of a dramatic standoff. I arrived just in time, and that's when everything began to change. I took a deep breath and stayed calm. I knew I had the legal ground to stand on, and I wasn't going to let this situation get out of control. I walked up to the officers and pulled out the property deed. It was a simple but effective move. Not only did I own the land, but the cul-de-sac where Karen had raised such a fuss was part of an old easement that predated the very existence of the HOA. That's right. Before Karen's HOA ever even existed, that cul-de-sac was part of a historic agreement, and it was legally a shared space. The HOA had no jurisdiction over it, and certainly no right to impose any regulations. The officers were taken aback when they saw the deed. They quickly realized that Karen's complaints were unfounded. The officer who had arrived earlier called in the situation to the county, and within just 3 minutes, a county inspector who happened to be in the area came by and confirmed everything I had said. At that moment, the truth had finally won out. Now, here's where the story takes a turn. Karen's HOA wasn't just wrong about this one instance. They had been operating illegally for years. As I soon found out, they had been making unauthorized restrictions on land they didn't own, including parts of my property. They had been fining neighbors for trivial things, bullying landowners into submission, and even blocking utility access on easements. In essence, they had been abusing their power for far too long. Within days, a formal complaint was filed against the HOA. The county launched a full investigation, and what they found was nothing short of astonishing. It didn't take long for the powers that be to realize just how much the HOA had overstepped its bounds. As the investigation progressed, the county began to uncover years of violations and illegal actions. The HOA had been acting as if they owned the entire neighborhood, dictating what people could do on their own land, and enforcing rules that were beyond their legal rights. And then, it happened. The county made the decision to dissolve the entire HOA. Karen's reign was over. The fines that had been levied against residents were reversed, and the power of the HOA was stripped away. It was a victory not just for my family, but for all the other residents who had been unfairly targeted by the HOA's overreach. But the story didn't end there. As for Karen, well, the shame of it all was too much for her to handle. She couldn't stay in the neighborhood, knowing that everyone knew what had happened. Within a month, Karen packed up and moved out, abandoning the neighborhood she had once tried so hard to control. As for my daughter, she still rides Daisy through that same cul-de-sac, and every time she does, it feels like a small victory. I see her smile as she passes the spot where Karen once stood, trying to impose her will on us. I smile too, because we've learned something powerful through all of this. Some people try to control what they don't understand, but sometimes karma just gallops right back. And when it does, it's a beautiful thing. We now walk with our heads held high, knowing that we didn't let anyone take away our freedom, and that, when we stand together, the truth can conquer even the most stubborn of foes. Every time my daughter rides Daisy past that cul-de-sac, I can't help but feel proud. Proud of her, proud of what we've accomplished, and proud of the fact that sometimes the good guys do win.